In 2010, Rockstar Games released a game that would forever change how I view video games, and the stories set within them, Red Dead Redemption. Part of the allure of this game, for me, was the main protagonist, John Marston. At the time, I had never got behind a character in a video game as much as I did with him. He wasn't a hero, but he wasn't a villain either. He was a bad man, but he would do anything to save his family, a man very much on a path of redemption. Fast forward 8 years, and its successor is released, Red Dead Redemption 2, and with it, probably my all-time favorite video game protagonist is introduced, Arthur Morgan. In this video, I wanted to explore the morality of Arthur Morgan. Was he a good man, or is he simply a villain? Now, right off the bat, I know what a lot of you might be thinking. Doesn't that depend on how you play Arthur Morgan? Well, for this video, we are looking at a high-honor Arthur Morgan, an Arthur Morgan who, given the opportunity, would much rather talk his way out of a situation than resort to violent measures. A man who wants a better life for the people he cares about and himself.
Listen, buddy, you're a charming fellow, one of the best. But me and the kid here, we're trying to talk business, so could you possibly leave us alone? No offense intended.
Ain't no pleasing some folk. Just trying to be friendly.
This version of Arthur Morgan is most likely to be the canon version, as Roger Clark himself, the man who voiced Arthur Morgan, considers the high-honor version of Arthur to be the canon one.
Stop bullying the boy. I'll stay with you a while. If anything comes, I'll protect you as needed. What's wrong with you?
Always be! You came when you did!
Now that we have addressed the elephant in the room, let's try to determine whether or not Arthur Morgan is a villain in the world of Red Dead Redemption, or whether he might just be considered a complicated hero. To determine this, we will look at how Arthur treats people, from the gang to random people he encounters throughout the game, assuming you are following a mostly high-honor playthrough. We will look at what Arthur stands for, what his moral code is, and ultimately whether or not he achieves his redemption at the end of the game. Pre-warning for anyone who hasn't yet completed the game, there will be major spoilers in this video. So, if you haven't completed it yet, I would recommend you go back and do that first before watching this video. Arthur Morgan is many things: an outlaw, a survivor, and a man burdened by the choices he's made. But if you look closely at his interactions with the Van der Linde gang, you'll find a complex portrait of a man caught between loyalty, cynicism, and, ultimately, redemption. One of the most interesting relationships he has is with John Marston himself. Although Arthur criticizes John early in the story for being unreliable, he ultimately sacrifices everything to ensure John and his family have a chance at a better life. In his final moments, Arthur chooses to help John escape, urging him to build a future away from the gang's destructive influence. It's a selfless act, driven by a deep sense of loyalty and a recognition that John represents hope for something better.
Soon, you gotta go. Go. Don't look back.
In his interactions with Hosea Matthews, Hosea serves as a mentor and father figure to Arthur, and it's clear that Arthur holds him in the highest regard. He often sides with Hosea over Dutch when tensions arise, showing that he values Hosea's wisdom and moral guidance. Then there's Sadie Adler. When Sadie first joins the gang, she's grieving the loss of her husband and struggling to find her place. Arthur not only supports her, but encourages her to grow into one of the most capable and fearless members of the group. His respect for her strength and independence is a testament to his ability to see the best in people, even in the darkest of circumstances. Arthur is by no means perfect, though. His treatment of the gang isn't always honorable. Early in the story, Arthur's relationship with John is marked by tension. He openly mocks John for abandoning the gang and failing to pull his weight, often calling him lazy or unreliable. Arthur's interactions with Abigail also reflect this roughness. When she pleads with him to help John early on, Arthur is dismissive and reluctant, brushing off her concerns.
I need you to
I'm sorry to ask, but
It's little John. He's got himself caught into a scrape
he
again.
ain't been seen in 2 days.
Your John will be fine. I mean, he may be as dumb as rocks and as dull as rusted iron, but that ain't changing because he got caught in some snowstorm.
Please go.
It's only as the story progresses that he begins to see the bigger picture and take her pleas seriously. Outside of the gang, we also see many instances of the contrast between an outlaw and a man trying to do the right thing. One of Arthur's most significant side missions involves Thomas Downs, a struggling farmer who owes money to the gang. This encounter represents Arthur at one of his lowest points. When Arthur visits Downs to collect the debt, it's clear the man has nothing to give. Downs is visibly ill, so sick he can barely stand. But Arthur doesn't relent. Following Dutch's orders, Arthur intimidates and beats Downs until the man collapses in the mud. This moment is brutal and unflinching, highlighting Arthur's complicity in the gang's darker dealings. It's not just another robbery or fight. It's an act of cruelty against a man who can't defend himself. And it's a pivotal moment for Arthur's story. Not only does it lead to his tuberculosis diagnosis, but it also forces him to confront the moral consequences of his actions. In contrast to the Downs mission, Arthur's interactions with Charlotte, a widow struggling to survive, show him at his most compassionate. When Arthur first meets Charlotte, she's grieving the loss of her husband and struggling to adapt to life alone in the wilderness. She can barely hunt or fend for herself, and it's clear she's at risk of starving. Arthur steps in, teaching her how to shoot and offering practical advice to help her survive. This mission is a turning point for Arthur. By helping Charlotte, he's not just offering immediate aid, he's empowering her to take control of her own life. Unlike his earlier actions with Downs, where he took from someone already struggling, Arthur gives without expecting anything in return. What makes this interaction even more poignant is, there's no grand reward or violent climax. Just a simple act of kindness between two people who've both lost so much. If Charlotte's gratitude and growth serve as a reminder that Arthur, despite his past, is capable of genuine goodness. Another striking example is Arthur's interaction with Sister Calderon in Saint Denis. When Arthur donates money to help orphans, Sister Calderon tells him that no matter what he's done, it's never too late to be a good man. This moment resonates deeply with Arthur, serving as a reminder that even small acts of kindness can have meaning.
I'm afraid.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan. Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
So, what do these interactions tell us about Arthur Morgan? On one hand, his acts of kindness and respect show that he is capable of great empathy and loyalty. On the other hand, his harsher moments remind us that Arthur is a deeply flawed man, shaped by a lifetime of violence and survival. All this aside, though, through countless hours in this world, playing as Arthur Morgan, my opinion was made up long before I made this video. Everyone will have seen a different version of Arthur Morgan, but the Arthur Morgan I spent time with was a man of complexity. Yes, he could be ruthless, he could gun down almost an entire town with Micah, or beat a man half to death for just a few dollars. But most of the time, whilst exploring the world with Arthur Morgan, I saw a man who would stop to help almost any random stranger in need of help. A man who couldn't turn his back to a grieving widow, who had no chance of survival without him. A man who would rescue slaves without any need for a reward. A man who would most often than not choose to do the right thing. In the end, in my eyes, Arthur did achieve his redemption. Arthur's sacrifices and his struggles with his actions resonated with me on a deep level. Arthur Morgan wasn't a hero or a villain. Arthur Morgan's story is ultimately about redemption. How even the most flawed and broken among us can strive to leave the world a little better than they found it. His journey reminds us that it's not too late to change, to make amends, and to choose kindness in the face of cruelty. Arthur's legacy isn't defined by his mistakes, but by his final acts of selflessness, showing that a good man isn't one without sin, but one who seeks to do good despite it.
The many miles we walk, the many things we learn, the building of a shrine, only just to burn. That's the way